My friends are in the worst time of their lives, and this is not the time to just like leave them to just get on with it. It would feel like a really kind of cowardly thing to do, and I felt like if I did that, maybe I would never forgive myself, even if everyone else thought it was the right thing to do. Well, it was all really kind of by chance, I guess you could say, because I mean, I didn't really have any awareness of Japan when I was younger. My first long-term residence was directly after graduating from university on, I think many people know this, the JET program, which is a program which invites young non-Japanese people to Japan to help out, mostly in English classrooms in schools. And so I spent 2 years in North Japan. I then went back to England intending to find some kind of job in England, but just couldn't really get Japan out of my mind because I'd had such a good time in those 2 years. So I decided I wanted to work in Japan again, and working in a university sounded like kind of quite a good thing to do. I had a friend that was doing that and it looked quite good. Thanks to that friend who was already in the Japanese university, she connected me up with the university where I ended up working. And I was employed by them, and so came to Ishinomaki, where I am now, in 1993. March 11th, 2011, which is sort of engraved in everyone's memories here, it was a Friday, but because it was March 11th, then that was in spring vacation, so it wasn't a very, very busy time for us at the university. And we didn't really have to go into work if we didn't have something that we had to do. But for some reason, I decided to go in, which was a very lucky choice, ultimately. The earthquake struck in the afternoon when I was just in my study at the university. And it was just a very lucky place to be in because it's a pretty sturdy building and there were other people around. And it was very scary just to experience the earthquake because of course it was much bigger than any earthquake I'd experienced before. And then of course there was the tsunami that came an hour later, but we were lucky that the tsunami actually didn't flood in the campus. It came pretty close. But it didn't flood the campus, so I avoided seeing that, although of course I did see all the devastation afterwards when I left the university. Directly after the disaster then, of course, the whole city was underwater basically, so you couldn't get into the centre of city, so I was just forced to stay at the university for about 2 nights, 3 days, just sleeping on the floor there with other members of staff and the small number of students that were there at the time. An Ishinomaki friend actually came to find me, partly just to see that I was okay, and also to tell me that our mutual friend, Mr. Goto, who is the owner of the biggest hotel in Ishinomaki Grand Hotel, that he had turned the hotel into an evacuation shelter. I went with my friend to the Grand Hotel, and Mr. Goto said to me, "Oh, you should stay here until you can move back into your apartment." He was always a good friend even before the disaster, but everything that happened around the disaster, like just being with him and helping, for example, being with his wife to take care of her while he was working at the evacuation shelter, and then my individual drama about deciding to stay in Ishinomaki even after I was advised to leave by the embassy, that just kind of cemented our friendship, and that resulted in him saying, like, when you die, you're going to be put in our family grave. It's a very rare thing to have someone say that to you and actually mean it, because apparently he's actually like talked with the family priest about it and everything, which is kind of a bit embarrassing. And I'm worried about how all the dead ancestors are going to feel about British guys suddenly mixing up with them, but we'll just have to see what happens. For me, the really shocking thing was the first time I actually saw the damage caused by the tsunami. So that was when I left the university with my friend and went to the Grand Hotel, and just seeing the city just completely devastated. I mean, the whole city was sort of brown from mud. There was just mud everywhere. There was still lots of water lying around, and literally cars like upside down, and I saw a car like just thrust into the window of a second floor building. And so it really made you feel that this was the end for Ishinomaki, and there was no way that we could like rebuild it. It was just the end of the city. No one in Ishinomaki has not lost someone, either a family member or a friend. So we've all gone through that grief. That was, I mean, again, that was very, very surprising, because I just suddenly got a text message from the embassy. I just thought they were trying to check that I was alive, which they were, but then was the surprising thing they said about the Fukushima nuclear reactor still being in danger of exploding. And so they were recommending everyone in North Japan and the Tokyo area, all British nationals, to leave the area. But for me, because I was in the middle of the disaster area, I couldn't really move out of it very easily, so they said they would come and get me. And I talked to Mr. Goto, I talked to several friends in Ishinomaki. I've been told this by the embassy, what do you think I should do? And they all said, oh, you should definitely go back to England because it's really bad here, and we'd just be happier to know that you're in a safe place. But at the same time, I was thinking, you know, my friends are in the worst time of their lives, and this is not the time to just like leave them to just get on with it. It would feel like a really kind of cowardly thing to do. And I felt like if I did that, maybe I would never forgive myself, even if everyone else thought it was the right thing to do. And when the embassy people came to get me, they knew that I was confused about what to do. And they said, well, let's at least go back to Sendai, which is the nearest big city to Ishinomaki, because they had like a base set up in Sendai. And they said, let's go back to Sendai and you can make a final decision there. So I sort of said provisional goodbyes to everyone in Ishinomaki, which was all very emotional. In the morning, I sort of finally decided, no, I just can't go back. I just have to stay with my friends in Ishinomaki. I did get back to Ishinomaki the next day. And went back to the Grand Hotel, and everyone was like, oh. Mr. Goto was very angry with me. He said, I told you to go back to England and raise lots of money, and you failed. But I knew that he was just pretending to be angry. And everyone was just really kind of like, oh, Richard. And that's, you know, everyone was saying, oh, you're an Ishinomaki guy, you know, you're wonderful. So that just really kind of like, I was good friends with many people before that, but that kind of really raised the level of the bonds of our friendship, basically. I mean, now it's definitely looking a lot better, but it's not completely back to normal. There's still signs that a tsunami has razed the place to the ground. There are still, you know, there are sort of places with overgrown ruins that used to be a building. You can actually see the shape of the house and so on. But because so much time has passed, and of course we have lots of new roads and new buildings, and in a way I'm not saying this is a good thing at all, but it's enabled the city to kind of redevelop in a much more extreme way than it could have done if there had not been a tsunami, because this was a pretty kind of like old city, lots of old roads and old buildings, and a lot of those were just wiped away, and so they were able to kind of start from nothing. The famous places like Kyoto, they have all the famous temples and sightseeing places, but that's not the regular Japan. But here it's just really the regular Japan, just everyday life is really easy to see here, in addition to the fact that if you like seafood, then this is the place to come, because the seafood is wonderful. It doesn't have to be raw, you can cook it as well. And also just the natural scenery is, you've got the ocean, you've got some mountainous areas, and the whole river. It is really beautiful as well. So it's definitely worth a visit, in addition to which you actually get the chance to see the disaster area and maybe come to where I work and see tsunami damaged buildings and see what it was like. So it has the educational part and also the enjoyable part at the same time, yeah. This place is known as Kadonowaki Elementary School Ruins. So originally it was an elementary school, but it's pretty close to the Pacific Ocean. It's about 700 meters away from the coast. And so it was very badly damaged by the tsunami, of course. But not only that, it was also damaged by a tsunami-caused fire. Yeah. So it had this double, more the tsunami and the fire. And so that makes it kind of very special. There are lots of other tsunami damaged facilities around the disaster area, but I think we're the only one that actually had the fire as well. And so the whole place has been converted into this information centre with information about the disaster and about the necessity of evacuating correctly. And we have a large number of exhibits. It's not just the damaged school building, there's lots of information. And we can also cater to English-speaking people because I'm here to talk to people, and also we do have rental multilingual tablets that help guide you around the facility as well, in Japanese, English, 2 kinds of Chinese and Korean as well. So it's definitely a very, very good place to come and learn about the disaster. And we've had good things said about it by a lot of the visitors. So I think it's definitely worth a visit.